Just make sure we're all set up and ready. Okay, fantastic. So welcome everyone. As I've said, we had over 500 registrations for this event. So to manage the room effectively, we're asking that you keep your mic muted and your video off, but do feel free to communicate via chat. My colleague Sandy is monitoring the chat and monitoring questions and comments, but as you can imagine, it's a lot to manage when there are so many of you here. But we're really excited that this topic particularly excited you and made you interested and got you up early in the morning to be with us today. So we're going to make sure this is a really valuable session for you. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you on behalf of the social enterprise that I co-founded, Rocking Your Teens. Your donations raised over £400, so we really appreciate it. And that's going to go towards increasing resilience, inspiring and raising aspirations in teenagers. If anyone does want to find out more about Rocking Your Teens, you can go to the website rockingyourteens.com. And at some point, Sandy will post in the chat a link to Rocking Your Teens. But we really appreciate all of your donations. You've been very generous. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jenny Garrett. I am an award-winning coach, author, and leadership trainer. My books explore the empowerment of working women and women in leadership roles. And together with my team, we use our years of experience in coaching and leadership development to support women and ethnically diverse leaders to progress at work, as well as supporting majority group leaders, usually white leaders, in making inclusion happen. Now, the killing of George Floyd in 2020 and the subsequent rise of the Black Lives Matter movement has served as an inflection point in which we've been forced to take a hard look at inequality and racism in society. In particular, the structural and systematic disadvantage of those from African diaspora and Black people. We decided to run this event today because as coaches, we have found that in our experience of coaching and delivering diversity, inclusion, and belonging training in organizations, that well-meaning white leaders sometimes feel uncertain, fearful, and reticent to broach the topic of race and to know how to support their Black colleagues. And we wanted to create a safe space in which to help. So please note that today we are specifically talking about Black staff, not Black, Asian, and ethnic minority colleagues. What we found and what we know is that the Black experience is not the same as the experience of those from Asian and ethnic minority groups, and it's too often combined. We believe that that doesn't deliver the change that's really needed. Yeah? So do be kind to each other, do be generous with each other. Everyone is at a different stage on their journey in terms of diversity, inclusion, belonging. And there might be some questions that you think you've gone beyond. That's fine. There are no naive questions. There are no stupid questions. We're just all on this journey together. And if we decide, and I encourage us to decide that we all have positive intentions here and that we all want the best for everyone, I think we can really create an environment where we can learn and grow from this hour together today. So I encourage us all to adopt a beginner mind in which we're open to learning from each other. None of us are perfect. We're all capable of saying the wrong thing. So let's be forgiving. Yeah? And I hope we can all agree to that. I'm seeing you all right now with your thumbs up agreeing. So during this session, experienced executive coaches, Claudia Crawley, OBE Alofoje, and Jessica Rogers, all listed in the Diverse Coaching Directory, a directory which connects corporate organizations with coaches from Black, Asian, and minority backgrounds. We'll discuss approaches that you can take away as a white leader to support your colleagues. And Sandy, when you have a moment, please do post in the chat the link to the Diverse Executive Coach Directory. If you don't know about it already, it's definitely something to flag up to your human resources team. So Claudia, Obehi, and Jessica will introduce themselves, and I will start by asking them some questions, and then we'll open it up to you for your questions and reflections in the chat. And we'll keep an eye on them, and we'll pick the questions that we think are most pertinent to the topic. But before we start, I have a couple of questions for you. So please do complete our anonymous poll, and it will be anonymous, so don't worry, we won't know who said what. And the first is just asking a bit about you. Which closest fits your role title that you have? So do complete that poll. So nearly there, 210 of you have completed it so far. Let's see if we get the last few. Okay, got 225 of you so far have completed. I think I'm going to end the poll there. Oops, a few more coming in. Yeah, I'll end it. Okay, so hopefully you can see the results there. 26% of you are managers. The next highest group is head of. And then we have 6% of you are CEOs, and then a bit of a selection through the other groups. So thank you for letting us know your type of role. And as it is, you know, for white leaders, that was our target group. That it's great that we have managers, head ofs, directors, managing directors, and CEOs here. So thank you for letting us know. And I've got a second quick poll that I would like to do. And that's just really understanding, you know, in terms of ethnicity, who is in this room. So out of the 265 of you here at the moment, what ethnicity do we have? This would be great to see. Wonderful. 220 of you completed. Lovely. Most of you have completed. We're at 241 of you. So I will end the poll there. Thank you for responding so promptly. And what we find with 58% of you are define yourself as white, 31% from Black, African, Caribbean, or Black British heritage. And then we have 6% from Asian British, 2% mixed or multiple groups, and 2% who define themselves as other. So great, thank you so much. I think it helps you also to know who's in the room also, and it also helps us when we're thinking about the questions and the responses that we give. So thanks so much for sharing that. It's our turn, I think, to introduce ourselves. Great, I think let's start by introducing ourselves, but I also wanted to remind you that the hashtag for the event is what Black staff need. And do feel free to share on social media your thoughts, your reflections on this event. And you can tag myself at Jennifer Garrett, Claudia, who is Claudia WPC, Jess, who's Jessica Rogers 76, and also our directory, which is BAME Exec. But again, Sandy will post those in the chat when she gets a moment. So starting with you, Claudia, please do introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, lovely to see you here. I'm Claudia Crawley and my business is called Winning Pathways Coaching. Now I'm an author and I'm an award-winning mentor and I'm also an executive coach, and I specialise in working primarily with women social work managers. I have 25 plus years experience of being active in the anti-racism movement. And whilst the years have passed us by, racism hasn't, unfortunately. We're still having the same conversations we were having 25 years ago. It's a bit depressing, really. And I gave up delivering anti-racism training events because I found them actually exhausting. Many course participants would unashamedly gaslight the Black trainer. So it wasn't good for my mental health, and it definitely wasn't worth the money. But early last year, in May, I think it was, 2020, when George Floyd was filmed dying at the knee as a white police officer, I was actually galvanized into action again by my disgust with people who think it's okay to maintain their power and their sense of superiority by killing fellow human beings. Because we deserve better and the world deserves better. So here I am back in the forefront of the fight for equality. So alongside my coaching, I'm now developing race equality allies groups, and the one I'm working with at the moment is in the Women's Equality Party, where the members are doing some amazing things. I also coach Black staff facing challenges at work, and I offer a service to white coaches who are challenged by issues of racism that may arise whilst they're coaching Black clients. I'm also currently writing my 4th book about successful women of colour and the challenges they're faced in their careers. I'm hoping that's going to be out by the end of the year. So that's me.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Claudia. We'll go to you next, Obe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Obehi Alofoje, and I'm a psychologist and a productivity coach and a mental health consultant. I co-founded a company called Aurora Wellness, and we help forward-thinking organizations and teams to implement impactful productivity and mental well-being strategy into the workplace, so that every employee can produce their best work without burning out. Of course, the Black experience means that some Black staff would be particularly at risk of some mental health issues like anxiety and depression. And so I also coach individual leaders to help them lead by example and have transparent conversation that help their employees build on the respect and the trust that's necessary. So I'm happy to be here. I think it's an awesome conversation to be having, and I'm all for it. So yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Obe. And over to you, Jess.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rogers, and I'm delighted to be here as well. I'm a business and executive coach. In my business coaching, I mainly coach female entrepreneurs to help them grow and develop purpose-led businesses, because I feel really strongly that when you are running a business that means something to you from a heart level, not only are you doing work that matters, which enriches you, it also enables you to really live a life that you love. I also work with individuals and groups in corporate settings, with leadership programs, helping people to develop leadership skills and a mindset as well for career success. And most recently, a lot of that work has been with Black and minority ethnic leaders and potential leaders, helping them navigate what is increasingly an environment where they feel in a spotlight, and how to manage that and navigate that for their own career success. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here this morning as well. And I look forward to a really interesting discussion.
Fabulous. Thank you. As you can see, I've brought an amazing panel together with such a wealth of experience. So I'm going to get right to it. And the first question, managers just want to treat all staff the same to maintain fairness. What do you think about this approach? It makes sense on paper. Fairness looks like treating everyone exactly the same. But do you think this works? Obe?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to not like that, but it just, what it is the question that popped in my head, which is, what does fairness mean? Fairness to one person completely different, and let's assume we know what it means, which is everybody treated equal, but everybody isn't equal. That situation isn't the same. So you have to be able to see your staff or Black staff as individual to your white staff. They're different. Their experience would be different. Their outlook would be different. So the idea that you're treating someone the same isn't actually true. And one of the examples that I had is 5 years ago or so, my dad was dying, and I had to help organize and make sure that he was fine. My white manager didn't understand why he wasn't in a home, because he didn't understand the culture. I'm Nigerian by culture, so we don't it's just a last resort to be able to do that. But he didn't know. He just assumed, well, a typical white employee would have just, they don't have to deal with all that caretaking situation and all that, but we were not equal. And that was his first mistake. It wasn't his fault. He just didn't know. And we hadn't had that kind of conversation to be able for him to know that actually completely different. I can't assume what's good for one will be good for another. So that's what I wanted to add to that. They're all different.
Wonderful, thank you. And Claudia, what would you add to that? You're muted, Claudia, you're muted. Are you stuck? That's it.
For some reason I couldn't get to the, okay, so I'm talking about sameness. I think we need to think about what we mean by sameness, because the Western world was created by able-bodied white men for able-bodied white men. So the standard by which we actually measure sameness is what works well for able-bodied white men. And this immediately puts everyone else at a disadvantage, doesn't it? So when you're treating everyone the same, it's not fair, because there are certain groups who are at a disadvantage. It's merely a way of making the lives of managers and leaders easier. So I'm going to give you an example. Think about wheelchair users. There was once upon a time when wheelchair users found it really hard to access public buildings, public transport, or even something as basic as public loos. And we had to take their needs into account and consciously create access to those places. We had to treat them differently because their experience of the world is different. So the same goes for Black people. Our daily life experiences are different. We're 9.6 times more likely to be stopped and searched, 3 times more likely to be detained involuntarily under the Mental Health Act, and 4 times more likely to experience death before, during, or after childbirth, and 2.4 times more likely to die from COVID-19. So what good leaders do, they find out about the needs of their Black staff and they address those needs systematically in policies and workplace practice. Our life experiences are different, and those experiences can impact on our performance at work. So a good example, did you actually reach out to your Black staff members when George Floyd was killed? Did you find out how they were, how they'd taken it? Have you set your managers on anti-racism or unconscious bias courses so that they can work on their own white fragility and their biases? This is good leadership.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're getting some real comments in the chat. No one said a word to me about George Floyd. Your experience, OB, of your dad passing, and some people are really resonating with that experience. And Jess, what would you add to this question?
I think Claudia and Obehi have covered it so well. For me, it always feels like a bit of a cop-out when people say they're treating everybody the same and that's fair. It's almost the same thing as saying I don't see colour. Actually, we're not the same. And when it's okay to acknowledge we're not the same, and in acknowledging it, also then look at how you can treat people so that they get what they need, meet them where they are to get what they need, rather than just trying to give this blanket approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I often show an image which some of the audience might have seen before, which is of people trying to look over a fence, and the tall person being able to see over the fence, the middle person not being able to see, the really small person definitely not being able to see. And giving everyone that same foot up means that the tall person just gets taller. The small person still can't see over the fence. So this idea of treating everyone equally doesn't work. It's about equity and thinking, what does someone need? And if anyone's a parent here, you'll understand that one child will need one-to-one time with you. Another child will need absolute freedom. Your children need different things. and your employees need different things, and you have a responsibility to find out what that is to be able to unlock their potential. So thank you. Great responses to that question, which I really appreciate. We've been asked if the recording will be shared. It will be shared amongst the people who are here today. So absolutely, the recording will be shared. So another question for you. Microaggressions, like you speak well for a Black person, or I thought you were a single parent to Black women, appear to be small mistakes. Why do they matter so much? Are they really such a big deal? I'm going to start with Jess this time.
Yeah, they absolutely are, Jenny. It's just the reminder that you're different. When you get those comments, it's like putting you in your place, and it's quite degrading and it's hurtful. I want to give an example from my experience. So before I came into coaching 13 years ago, I worked in media and entertainment, and I was a brand manager for some film brands. And this was before, social media, before our pictures are everywhere with our profiles on LinkedIn or whatever. And I remember, particularly after I got married and changed my name to Rogers, my married name, I'd have conversations with people, we'd arrange meetings, and I'd turn up at the meeting, usually for film companies, and I'd get this visible, oh, you're not what, and then people would say things like, oh, you're not what we expected. You don't look like you sound. And actually, on the face of that, and then they'd say it, and then we'd continue the meeting, and on the face of it, okay, it's a comment. But actually, for me, it was really telling me, we didn't expect a Black woman to turn up, actually. You speak too well. That's what it said to me. But I'd get the comment, and then I'd have to then sit for the remaining 2-hour meeting and do my job. But actually, that comment sticks with you. And when you get it time and time again, it starts to chip away at you. There is a psychological effect, because then you're almost going in on your guard, always on your guard. And so these microaggressions, these sorts of comments, on the face of it, to the people who make them, oh, it's just a comment, they've just thrown it away. But actually, it really makes a difference to that individual. And I just want to give you one other example. In the last lockdown, I went onto a call with a group of other coaches. They were white coaches. And it was like a peer-to-peer call. And I happened to have a head wrap on. And one of the coaches said, oh, Jess, you look different. Oh, look at your hair wrap. And I just said, oh, yeah, bad hair day. And she went, oh, I thought it was a statement. And she said it. And then the conversation, and this was a fellow coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's so much. The microaggressions make a difference. They are degrading and they are hurtful.
Thank you. And I think that point you're making, that if you overhear a microaggression, you might think, oh, that's a one-off, but it's the fact that it's over and over again, that the sort of death by 1,000 cuts, they often talk about it as. OBE, your thoughts?
Hi, I just feel like I'm going to just chuckle throughout today. My thought is that there's something psychological about you. When you wake up, I don't think people walk around thinking, what skin am I in today? You're not thinking, you're just being, right? And the more closer you are to yourself, the more you can just be. And occasionally when somebody throws the mic, the question is, why did it matter so much? What seemed like a very small throwaway comment where you didn't mean anything had taken that person back to a previous trauma. So it might not be what you just said, but all it did was just trigger the last time that it was really painful. So for Jess, you going into that meeting with, oh God, okay, here I am again. So while instead of getting into the job you came to do, you're still trying to get yourself out of that headspace. So that's what takes the time. It's the 15 minutes, the hour, the 3 days that somebody takes to reset themselves again, because it's a reminder that you are an other, and others don't feel safe, because others means who's coming to get me. There's something about that is threatening. So what seems like a very throwaway, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. That's true, you didn't mean anything by it. For that person, you just triggered it. So, and that's the thing to be able to bear in mind. It's like someone walking around with a scar. They've gotten used to the scar. Nobody notices anymore. Then they go to Tesco and someone goes, oh, how'd you get that big scar? Then all of a sudden, the accident that they experienced that gave them that scar is going to come right into view, because they've gotten used to not really being pointed at anymore. So that's what you have to think about, what those microaggressions are. They're death by 10,000 paper cuts, as they say. Okay, that's what I wanted to share there. So bear that in mind when you're a white leader who's thinking, just throw away comment, consider the comment first.
Thank you. And Claudia, what would you like to?
Just to give a definition of microaggression, this is one that I've taken from a psychologist called Beverly Daniel Tatum. What she said is that microaggression, the brief and commonplace verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, unquote. And what they do, they communicate hostile, derogatory racial messages to the receiver. Now, microaggressions can be well-meaning. So, for example, I don't see race, or I'm colorblind. Probably said because someone meant well.
Yes.
And they can also be intentional or unintentional. But even when they are well-meaning and when they are intentional, the effect is still negative. Now, the issue is not the intention. The issue is the effect.
Yes.
So whether you're saying something that is well-meaning and unintentional, it's the effect, it's the impact that it has on that person that matters. And the other thing, just to add to that, is I think leaders need to take a zero tolerance approach to them. They need to be included in any policy, anti-racist policy that the organization has. Leaders need to set the standard and actually hold people to account on this. And they need to be called out because, as Obi says, they have a real impact on how we perform in the workplace. They have an impact on our mental health and our sense of well-being.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. The definition that you shared and the author, would you mind putting it in the chat? Because that's being requested, Claudia. So that would be really great. Thank you. A lot of questions are coming through and thoughts on these microaggressions. And definitely, you know, one thing I've seen is that organizations are running things like, let's talk about race. Let's explain what microaggressions are. They're educating their employees. I think that's the first step. You need to educate employees. And then if people still continue to do it, then there needs to be some consequences, you know, from continuing to do it. I think education, it starts with education because sometimes it is a mistake. And then when you're educated, then there's no excuse to keep making these mistakes. And there does need to be, as Claudia said, zero tolerance for this kind of behavior.
But can I just add, Jenny, it's about creating an environment where the Black employee can actually call out the microaggression without fear of that kind of retribution. So with, you know, if you can call it out and then the education's there, then you can change things. But if the Black employee feels that disempowered and feels they can't call it out, then actually it just continues.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with that. And I think I love the fact about the education of it, which means for any white leader here in this audience, if you haven't organized training for your team, then you haven't sorted it out. So the idea they're going to learn from books, you need to have a discussion. Say, these are the microaggressions. Here's what they sound like. Because the people in the room can go, my God, I've said that several times. And then you have that conversation, wow, I didn't think it was. So if you haven't had the meeting or you haven't had the training, then you haven't done it. So I don't want you thinking you come to a workshop like this and you all tick the box. You need to get training to get someone in your room with your team to have discussions about what it means, get a list of them out, and for you to admit, I've said that before, and for it to be okay that you made a mistake, and for your Black colleagues to know that you're making an effort to learn the thing. That's it.
Claudia wants to say something.
Just one other thing I'll add to all of that, and that is, on their own, microaggressions might appear small, but as we've already heard, they are an accumulation of indignities which have happened over a long, long period of time, over years. Practically every day we hear this stuff. If they're not challenged in the workplace, they're going to lead to greater, more severe racist activities and behavior. So they need to be nipped in the bud before that happens. It's just the start of something more severe.
And this is, I think, an important question. What is the most appropriate way to apologize for an inadvertent microaggression. No, as a white manager, you may not have realized that you said, oh, I don't see color, everyone's the same to me. You might have thought that was the fairest way and the best way to approach conversations. And then you realize now, I've been committing microaggressions for quite some time. How do you say sorry? Who would like to respond to that?
I'll go. You just say sorry.
Yeah.
You say sorry. And depending on where you've been, if you've been doing it in team meetings where you felt like it was a good thing that you were addressing your whole team and using this kind of language, I want you to go back to them and say, by the way, I know I always say I don't see color. Here's what I've always meant by that, but I now know that that's not appropriate. It wasn't helpful. So I apologize. I'm sorry that I did it. And I want you all to know that, not just to the black staff, but you want the white staff to know, oh, so this is not appropriate, because they don't go ahead and do it to their new teams, if that makes sense. So just say sorry. It doesn't have to be complicated. That's what I would say on this point.
Thank you, Claudia.
I think you do. You definitely have to say sorry. But also, it's not just about saying sorry, it's about not doing it again. And in order to not do it again, you need to understand why it's an offence and why it has had that kind of impact. So I would say ask questions, seek to learn, just leave your mind open and take the risk. You know, because I know for white people it is a risk. They're often afraid of getting it wrong. But if you don't ask the question, can you please tell me exactly what I did that was offensive, what I said? You probably know, but why is it offensive? Just make yourself vulnerable and take that risk, because if you don't do it, you're not going to understand, and understanding is key to all of this.
Do you want to add anything, Jess? Or you...
I completely agree. I think the saying sorry and showing that openness and willingness to learn and move forward. I think that's so important. Say sorry, absolutely. Yeah. Acknowledge.
You know, as a white leader, this is, you know, I think you should be thinking, how can I use my privilege with humility? You know, how can I engage in this journey with humility? I have privilege here. I have the ability to learn about something that I will never have to experience. And that's such, you know, that is a privilege, even though you might not have had a privileged upbringing, you know, you might have, you know, all sorts of things might have happened in your life. You have the privilege that you will never be discriminated against because of your race, and use that privilege with humility. And what I would say is go beyond saying sorry. In fact, I would say sorry. I would educate other people in terms of my mistake, and I would call it out when I see it in the future. It's about not being a bystander. You know, too often it's like, I'm a good person. I'm not doing the bad thing. But actually, if you stand by and observe other people doing that thing and don't speak up, in my opinion, you are equally in the same, you know, in the same situation as they are. So this, you know, not being a bystander is key in this process. It's moving beyond apologizing to taking action and really making change happen in your organization. So the final question before I open it up to other questions from the audience is, so the question is around, what is your top tip? Yeah, what's your top tip for helping white leaders to support their Black staff in the workplace? And I'll start with you, Claudia.
Okay, so for me, the best way to support Black staff is to do what great leaders should be doing. And that is to ensure that your organization is anti-racist and that it has an anti-racism policy and action plan. Now, what we know about racism is that it's a stubborn little devil, isn't it? It's been around for 400 years or maybe more. And just when you think you've got a handle on it, something happens and you realize that it's still lurking in the shadows, hidden in plain sight. And overcoming racism in the workplace requires energy, commitment, and staying power, because racism is so stubborn. So my top tip for managers is to, first of all, find your critical mass. Who is an ally? Who's anti-racist? Who is antagonistic to all of this? And who's in the middle? who are those people in the middle who you can persuade to move over to the side of anti-racism? And once you know that, you're in a better position to create a collective of anti-racist leaders throughout the organization. And now I'm not just talking about at the top, I'm talking about throughout the organization, because you want those people to be leading alongside you. Obviously, the buck stops with you as the person at the top, or I should say the people at the top, because for me, the leaders we're talking to here are senior managers as well as the CEO or the director. So within that collective of leaders, we want to include Black leaders as well, because you really need them on board. You need to listen to them. And what this will do, having this collective of leaders, it will deepen the organization's leadership reservoir. And that collective will lead the organization to resist racism. So what do I actually mean by resist? So we take the R. That means that you recognize that systemic racism exists throughout the workplace, and that's including in the C-suite and on the board. The E is to educate yourself about how racism operates and the part we all play within it. The S is to support your Black and brown staff in the way they wish to be supported. So again, you need to engage in a conversation and you need to listen to them. The I is to interrupt racist language and behavior. And we're talking about microaggressions here and the worst stuff, and call it out and take a zero tolerance approach to it. The S is to spot who is sitting at the decision-making table. Likely to be all white, but take action and make it diverse. Get some Black and brown people up there and on the board. And the final T is to talk to those organizations who are doing it well, and talk to your Black and brown staff who understand it best and learn from them. So if you don't know where those organizations are, use your network, find out. There are organizations like McKinsey & Co. and PwC who are doing lots of work around this. You can engage with them, subscribe to their what do you call them?
Newsletter.
Yes. And there's so much you can learn from them. So that's what I would say in terms of top tip.
Great, thank you. If you repost what you just said, your acronym, lots of people want that again, Claudia and Jess.
I think the key thing for me is don't assume that your Black employee can answer all of your Black Lives Matters or Black issues questions. I think, you know, whilst yes, obviously as Black people, we want to be, well, many people want to be part of the movement. Not everybody does. And I think sometimes there can be that assumption that, oh, you're Black, you can answer the question. So, but don't make that assumption. I think ask questions, but also give people the right to not respond if they don't want to respond, because they might not want to give that emotional labor to that. I'd also say don't skirt around issues. So if something comes up like a microaggression, or, you know, whatever comes up, address it head on and show that you are listening. So you're addressing it, but you're also listening. You're willing to apologize. You're really willing to acknowledge your part in what's gone wrong. And you're also willing to be part of fixing what's gone wrong as well, and fixing what's wrong in the system. But don't make it the responsibility of your Black colleague or employee to educate you. You know, make the effort and take the time to educate yourself. As Claudia's just given some places that you can go for that education, do that. Don't always fall back on your Black employee. That's my top tip.
Thank you. Such an important one. As you said, the emotional labor, the burden, the expectation, when who knows what else is going on in your life, with all the stats that Claudia mentioned at the beginning as well. So
also you just want to get on with your job. You want to rise through the ranks and get on with your career. You don't want to be the you know, spending your time as the spokesperson on that committee. You know, not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to be the activist. They want to further their careers.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I totally agree with that. The emotional labor that's attached to it is draining for a lot of people. So my top tip, well, I split it into three in my head, was that first spin, which is to assume that they're different. Okay, just assume that. Don't say, oh, everybody's equal. No, you just assume they're different, and that would lead into the next thing. The next thing is to allow conversation, airtime in your team meetings, whatever, especially when an incident or public incident involving race has come up. Always assume that your Black staff are not okay. Okay, it's a bit like someone being triggered by bereavement constantly. Assume that. Then there'll be somebody who's like, no, I'm good. That's okay. You don't have to, you just say, what do you need? Let me know. But there'll be someone or a few who will not be okay. And it's going to be a lot of work. I don't expect you to, and I keep doing team meeting because I know a lot of the organizations, NHS and some of the charities, we have a lot of morning briefing and weekly meeting. Do not use that weekly meeting to bring it up the first time while your 5 staff are sitting there. Go and reach out to them one by one before that meeting and say, by the way, this incident happened. How are you? Where's your head at? Let some of them tell, no, I'm good. This is just standard stuff that happened. Okay, is there anything we can do about that? And you can help. And someone might really be taking it really hard. You offer them something else. Again, they're not the same, right? So that's the thing I'm going to mention there. The final thing was around D&I, your D&I staff, who may be Black, who now has to do her job plus deal with the trauma. Okay, burnout is real for them. And so some organizations, depend on where you work, they're usually solo, which is a hard thing to be the face of it when something blows up. What are we doing? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to get out of bed. So this is the kind of conversation I wanted to have a team around a D&I consultant, somebody that can help out. So they're not the only one trying to find solutions for you. So that my point is, everybody's not the same. Have conversation one-on-one. Do not make a public show of, oh, tell me if you're okay. People will not tell you if they're okay. They just never mind the race situation, just in general. So be more individualistic with it. Think about it in bespoke conversation, and hopefully that would help. That's my top tip.
Thank you so much. And I've got something here which I think is so important. We're doing a lot of work with organizations, providing programs for their Black talent and their Black, Asian and ethnic minority talent. And we always include something with line managers, and we always include some sort of sponsorship, because it all needs to be integrated. And it's not about fixing the Black staff or the Black, Asian and ethnic minority staff. But one of the biggest barriers, I think, is that what does talent and excellence look like? I think white leaders and white managers need to consider that talent and excellence doesn't look one way. Yeah, it can sound different. Talent can have been brought up in a different place to you, walk differently, act differently, have totally different perspectives, and that's going to add to the creativity and innovation in your organization. But there's so much that's blinkered. Yeah, they're a great member of staff, but no, I don't see them to have that management potential. I don't see them working up the ranks. Their face doesn't fit. Even if you're not saying this outwardly, your behavior or your internal thinking is saying that. And it's time to open up to really think that talent can look so different. It can be a woman, it can be a Black person, it can be a disabled person, and talent can be amazing, and talent can work part-time. And until we start really opening ourselves up to truly believing that, nothing's going to change. So you might recruit more Black staff, but are you going to retain them? And are you going to actually enable them to really release their potential in your organization if you never believe that they are capable of being really talented and excellent? So a review of what all of these things look like in your mind. What does professional look like? What does excellence look like? What does talent look like? And really challenging yourself around that would be my tip. So we've got loads of questions coming.
Yeah, loads.
And we've only got about 10 minutes. But there's something coming through around this. I think white leaders are having real challenge with people saying things like, oh, this is reverse racism. We're giving all the Black staff opportunity, or we want to recruit people on merit. And that's what we've been doing in the past. This is sort of bypassing the merit and creating unfairness in our organizations. What's your response to that? Put a hand up who wants to respond out of the panels, just so I know.
Can I just say something quickly about that? Mm-hmm. Just because, let's assume you decided to recruit a young person into a role. do you ever start thinking about merit then? Or do you think we want a young person in the role who can be trained and go up the ranks? You don't start arguing about merit at that point. Something that made you decide that you want a young person into a role. That's it. That can, it doesn't mean you're discriminating against someone older, maybe, but does it mean that the reason why you wanted young people in that role, because they're going to grow within it? Maybe that's the point. So it could be as basic as thinking in that sense. Is it really about merit? Can we not find a young person to be able to do all those jobs? Yeah, we can. Is there some area they might need development support? Yes, that's true. But that could be said for a lot of other things. So that's my first thought about it. I just think that when it comes to something like race, everybody had an opinion about that. But if an organization said they wanted somebody young, or then there's no real argument there. So my question is, well, why not then? So that's my thought process there.
Thank you.
And I've got that around women as well. You know, there's been a big drive over the years to have more women in leadership positions, and for gender equality. And whilst there was, I'm sure, some argument around that, it's not quite as pertinent as it appears. It feels like it is when it comes to leveling the playing field in terms of race, and we have to ask ourselves why. We know why, but the people with that argument need to ask themselves why. What's the threat? Because that's what it always feels like, that when these conversations come up, it's because people feel that there is some sort of threat, almost like by leveling the playing field and giving people opportunity, I will lose my power. But that's not the case. It's a case of creating a more equitable situation, as opposed to somebody getting more power and someone losing power. And I think that's the conversation that perhaps needs to happen. Yeah,
you said that better than I did.
We're all saying it differently, and I think that's great. I definitely think there is space for everyone, and actually, who was the merit defined by? What is merit? This is dangerous. That I think that talk around we've been recruiting on merit. Now we're not going to be recruiting on merit. The criteria can change and be different and still be equally as good. Yeah. And I think that's the real danger. Claudia wants to say something.
Yeah. Can I first apologise for having to go out? This is what happens when you work from home. The doorbell keeps ringing.
9 minutes, Claudia. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, just to say something, merit isn't merit. It's not, because it's loaded with disadvantages. The people who get there on merit because they are white, that's why they get there. We are not, the people who appoint them are not looking at them from an objective perspective. There is bias involved in their choice. So it's not, merit is not merit.
Absolutely.
There's a guy who wrote a paper on this. I'm trying to remember his name, somebody Klein.
Right.
His first name is escaping me, but I would put it in the chat box if I could remember. It's worth reading that paper.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of references in the chat. And what I'm going to do is we will take some time and summarize the chat, and we will also send that out to everyone. So don't worry, we will send the recording. And
Roger Klein, that's it.
Summary of the chat as well, because there's been a lot from the audience in terms of their sharing as well. Okay, so so we've talked about merit, we've talked about this idea of reverse racism. I think it comes from fear. Will there still be a place for me? If you're doing a good job, there'll always still be a place for you. If you've got to where you are by not really, by shaking hands and just being in the right place at the right time, maybe there won't be. But if you're doing a good job, there'll always be a place for you in an organization. So there's no need to have your thoughts run by fear. So we're having some great feedback from everyone. I'm just trying to find, see if I can find another question that I think we can address. One last question. What should organizations do when they lack senior leadership and representation from Black colleagues in ensuring that the right voices are being heard when it comes to decision making?
Could you repeat that, please, Jenny? I'm just trying to get my head around what this question means.
Yeah, I just got to find it again. But ultimately, it was really about the fact that at the senior levels in organizations, there are very few there are no Black people. So if we want their voice in the decision making, what do you do when they're not there?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go.
I think one of the first things that any organisation needs to do is to develop a pipeline, a pipeline of leaders. Okay, that doesn't answer the question for the short term because those people are just not there. But if you haven't got a pipeline, it's unlikely that they're going to get there. A very good example of that is the fact that the FTSE 100 companies have no Black person right at the top at the moment. And the chances of getting someone at the top through the organisation, they're going to take years because they don't have a pipeline. There's no Black people at a low level either. So that's definitely the first thing. But you can, why not call on people on Black people from outside the organisation? Why not use specifically target Black consultants? Because they'll be bringing their, not just their knowledge, but also their experience of being Black and their Black perspective on the world. So that's one thing that could be done. So you're specifically targeting Black consultants.
Great, thank you. Jess, did you want to add?
It was Claudia said about the pipeline, about developing a pipeline. And I think there's an argument now for actually actively targeting your senior Black people that you have within organisations and giving them the opportunity to elevate, to step up, because we have to start somewhere. And so organisations, I believe, need to start to be intentional about that, because there is Black talent in these organisations. They might not be at those top levels, but they are in there. And it's about being intentional and finding them and supporting them and elevating them to start this process. And in doing so, start to build the pipelines, which I know organisations are starting to do by going to universities, targeting, programs. But sometimes the thing with this is that it's not just about giving development programs for Black people, because we all need developing. We don't all need lots of training. It's welcome, but at the same time, we also need opportunity. It's not just about the training and the development, it's opportunity as well.
Completely agree with that point. Obi, do you want to add anything? No, I would say a couple of things on this. Reverse mentoring can be a way of getting senior colleagues connected with the Black colleagues who might not be so senior in the organisation. Creating a shadow board, getting your Black colleagues into the room, even though they're not the board members, their voices are in the room, and that's developing the pipeline and the succession as well. So there are things that you can do that, just giving up and saying, well, there's no Black faces here. What can we do? That's not an excuse. Seek out, if people come to me all the time, do you know any Black people who can do this? I'm pleased for them to ask me. The reason that I created the Diverse Coach Directory is someone told me there were no Black executive coaches. They actually said they're all blonde bobbed women and there's no Black coaches. We've searched and there are none. And I said, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to find you some immediately. And I immediately sent them a good 20 CVs of highly qualified coaches that they could tap into. So this excuse, there aren't any, there's no one, I don't know where to find them. Reach out, we will help you. Other people will help you find them. Don't use it as an excuse. We've only got 2 minutes, Claudia, and I know you want to say something, but I want to leave people with our final coaching question. And maybe this means, because there's so much that we have to run another event. But there was a question that Leah sent in actually, which was, how can I, as a white person, a best word and offer to mentor a Black colleague? And the truth is, be intentional, and just in the same way you would ask someone, invite them, just say, I think I have something that could be helpful to you and I'd like to offer it, and they can say yes or no, but come to it with intention, positive intention, to really help someone, and that will be well received. So I would say go into everything with a positive intention. So our final coaching question that we want to leave white leaders with, please. We'll start with Obi. What's the final coaching question that you would like to leave the white leaders here with? Oh, you're muted.
Trying to avoid that. Okay. I would like you, white leader, to think about, what bias do I have toward my Black employee, my Black colleague, my Black neighbors, I want you to do that as a self-reflecting exercise. It's a tough one. You don't have to share it with anyone, but you need to see what's there. So my coaching question is, what is your bias? And I want you to be honest with yourself, because once you see it, feel free to write it down if you're brave enough, because you need to be able to see it, to be able to challenge some of those things. The bias are automatic. They just come right there. We don't even know they're there. And that's how we act upon. So my coaching question for you to start thinking is, what are my biases that I'm currently carrying?
Great. And if you're Claudia next, if you can be succinct, please, Claudia.
Yes, it will be succinct. I just want you to take yourself into the future 12 months from now. That's 12 months from now, the 18th of February 2022. And I want you to ask yourself, what will be the anti-racist achievement that I'm most proud of 12 months from now? What will be the anti-racist achievement that I'm most proud of 12 months from now?
Fantastic. Thank you. And Jess?
Mine is very similar to Claudia's. So what's my stake in my anti-racism work? And what change do I want to see and affect?
Lovely. And mine would be, what action am I willing to take to unlock the potential in all of my staff? What action am I willing to take to unlock the potential in all of my staff? Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation today. Thank you so much, Sandy, for supporting us with the chat, for posting in the chat. You'll see there are links, and also my website, jennygarrett.global, for the work we do in this space. Our final thought: diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome that we're all looking for. Thank you so much for your energy, and good luck, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Lovely to be here. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Obehi's gone.
I don't know if everyone's still, we've got still 203 people here.
Okay. I was hoping we could have a chat actually before.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for everyone to go, and then we can have a quick chat.
No, I mean, Jess and Obehi have gone.
Oh, did they go as well? I thought they were going to stay as well. Oh, so it all got, maybe they had to rush off. But great, well done.
We can have a
Great,
chat.
yeah, great.
Are we happy with it? Jenny?
Yeah, let me